As of me writing this script, Fortnite Chapter 2 Season 3 has come out a week ago, and so far I'm having a blast. After not playing Fortnite for a couple of months, this new season has reinvigorated my interest in the game and made it fresh to play again. And a lot of the fanbase shares this attitude towards the new season. However, as always, with new content comes more controversy, and this is a continuation of the strange relationship between Fortnite and its community that has been going on since the beginning of the game. To explore this relationship, we have to go back, all the way back to the beginning. At this point, I don't even have to explain Fortnite, as basically everyone and their mom has known about it for 2 years. The Battle Royale mode has been out since August 2017, but the game started becoming really popular around late February, early March of 2018. This is around when Season 3 was released, and this was when everybody started to play the game. Honestly, I would say that Season 3 was the peak of classic Fortnite, when the game was simple and people played it just to have fun. I remember coming home from school every day and dropping squads with my friends. Honestly, it was just 2 years ago, but I still feel nostalgic for it. And then, on May 1st, 2018, Season 4 was released and the game launched into the stratosphere. I remember on that day, literally like half the guys in my school didn't show up because they were playing the new season. I would say that Season 4 was the start of the second era of Fortnite, when they turned things up to like 11. The meteor crashed into an island, creating a giant crater and leaving rocks which gave you low gravity. The storyline also kicked off when the visitor escaped his crash pod. The community at this point was still united, as Fortnite was still seen as a game where people could get together and just have some fun. Even the professional players who streamed the game on Twitch still played the game to have fun and mess around. Building was common, but it was just a couple of ramps and walls for cover, or a skybase or fort in the endgame. The building of today's Fortnite was still far off. Fortnite was a really fun game back then, and the community was still mostly happy with how Epic Games managed the meta. The only real complaint was about how inconsistent the pump shotgun was, with some headshots infamously doing only 9 damage. However, other than that, Fortnite's relationship with its community was pretty good. On July 12, 2018, Fortnite Season 5 was released, and with it came some changes. For one, the pump shotgun was massively nerfed, as the double pump was essentially vaulted. This, combined with the fact that pumps were still massively inconsistent, made it so that shotguns were basically worthless. As such, SMGs became the kings of close-quarter combat. However, there's much more going on behind the scenes than a mere meta change. You see, Season 5 was a season released during summer vacation in the United States. This means that all the little kids who played the game are now home all day, which means they're playing more Fortnite. So as a result, Epic Games will want to make their game more noob-friendly and reduce the skill gap. As such, the shotgun, which is a weapon that requires high skill to use well, was nerfed. On the other hand, SMGs are a weapon that don't require a lot of skills. Just hold down the fire button in the general direction of the enemy, and you'll probably get a kill. The SMG family of guns received a huge buff in Season 5. The MP5 and P90 were added into the game, with the P90 being absolutely disgusting in how powerful it was. Its insane DPS and huge magazine size of 50 bullets turned it into a very overpowered weapon, allowing you to absolutely shred builds and people. Then you've got the drum gun, which was basically the best of an AR and SMG rolled into one gun. This thing melted builds like a knife through hot butter. The drum gun was the pinnacle of Season 5's spray and pray meta, which highlighted a growing divide in the Fortnite community. The Fortnite community can be divided into two parts, the casual players and the competitive players. Previously to Season 5, the game was just seen as a way to have fun, but starting now, some players started to take the game more seriously. Obviously, it was these players who were mad when the skill gap was reduced in Season 5 with the buff of the spray weapons. And thus began the war between the sweats and the timmies, the fish sticks and the soccer skins, the peelies and the dynamos, the casual and the competitive players. Going into the future, Epic Games would have the tough job of having to appease both sides of this community, and that would dictate the relationship between them and the community from now on. As Season 5 went on, Epic Games would nerf the SMGs, and they would vault the drum gun altogether in the version 5.4 patch. Building would be buffed as well, so the community would be happier with the meta. On September 27th, Fortnite Season 6 was released. As the school year had begun, all the little Timmies had gone back to school and weren't playing Fortnite as much. So Epic made the meta more skill-based. With the 6.31 update, the pump shotguns were heavily buffed, with a damage increase being implemented, as well as epic and golden variants to the pump being added. While Season 6 was good in the regard that it moved away from a closed skill gap, it was also what I would say was the beginning of the downfall of Fortnite. Fortnite started becoming less socially acceptable in most people's eyes at this point, and started gaining a reputation as a cringy kids game, which was the same thing that happened to Minecraft back in 2014. Check out the video I made about that. However, I don't think that the game started losing players. I'm pretty sure people still played the game and more people joined the game as well. It was just that nobody would say that they played Fortnite because it was seen as uncool. Moving on, Fortnite Season 6 wasn't at all good for the meta of the game. Season 6 happened during the Halloween season, so during the week of Halloween, Epic Games released a Fortnite Mirrors event. This event added zombies into Battle Royale, which was honestly a baffling addition. It would have made sense to add another game mode or an LTM for the zombies, but they just added it into the main game. I think this is a rare situation where both the casual and competitive sides of the community agreed on something, but the zombies were absolutely awful for regular Battle Royale gameplay. Sure, you can get some good loot from them, but you'd have to waste a lot of the ammo and draw attention to yourself. Also, the zombies would be able to destroy your builds easily, and they would gang up on you, which led to a lot of undeserved deaths. While we didn't know about it then, the zombies of Fortnite Mirrors would just be the start of the debate about bots in Battle Royale. Anyways, Season 6 also created another unique dilemma between Epic Games and the community. This was the return of the Skull Trooper. Skull Trooper was a skin that came out in the very first season of Battle Royale and didn't return since. This has led to the skin becoming highly coveted because it was quote-unquote rare. People who had the skin didn't want it to come back because they wanted to flex their OG status, while some people who wanted it would spend up to hundreds of dollars to buy an account which had the skin. Therefore, when it was announced that Skull Trooper would be returning to the shop, a vocal minority of the community was outraged. To appease them, Epic Games added an exclusive purple style to the Skull Trooper that only OG owners could use. This decision opened Pandora's box, as a debate raged on whether players should be rewarded just for supporting the game earlier than others. Also, since then, there have been many outrages over skins returning or reskins coming out in the shop, but this is the only one I'm going to talk about because it was the biggest controversy out of them all. Overall, I think it's stupid for the community to get so mad over some virtual pixels. I mean, just talking about Skull Trooper, the skin itself isn't really that good. On December 6, 2018, Season 7 of Fortnite was released. This season was a holiday theme, with an entire new iceberg biome being added to the island. However, this season would create even more tension within the community. This season added a new vehicle, the X4 Stormwing. This was a plane with the ability to boost, which had forward-facing cannons. This new form of mobility really stifled the competitive community. The boost of the Stormwing allowed it to break through builds, and the cannons on the front dealt substantial damage. But this was nothing compared to what would come next. On December 11, 2018, patch 7.01 was released, and with it came the Infinity Blade. Oh my god, what was Epic thinking? Holding the sword gave you 200 health and shield, as well as constant regeneration. The sword dealt 75 damage with its main attack, and allowed you to jump large spaces. If that wasn't bad enough, you get an instant 50 health per elimination. Yeah, this thing was so overpowered that it was removed from the game 3 days later. But that was honestly still too late, because in those 3 days was the competitive event called the Winter Royale. What an absolute disaster on the part of Epic Games. The person who was able to get the sword first would absolutely shred anybody on the ground. The rest of the lobby would be flying around in planes, shooting at each other but purposely missing, so that they would stall in the air until the endgame. I don't blame the competitive players for doing this. They were just doing their best with the cards that they were dealt. Although you have to admit that this did lead to some pretty funny clips.
Are you serious? Why the is Thanos in the game? Sing, 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 sing! Why is that in the game? Sing, sing! I wasted like 700 mats on that kid. He didn't get shot once. He's flying around the map with his sword. This is sing, 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 bro, around this whole map.
Overall, this entire fiasco made Fortnite competitive and Epic Games look like an absolute joke. However, I do think that some good came out of it, because this was one of the few times Epic actually listened to the community and implemented a change quickly. They put out a statement admitting that the sword was overpowered, and that they would rethink the way they would implement mythic weapons in the future. Other than that, the rest of the season was kinda boring. We got zombies again, but this time they were ice zombies. Ooh. There was an in-game Marshmello concert, but I don't really like his music, but it was still kinda cool. However, outside of Fortnite, there was a storm brewing. there was a newly released free-to-play battle royale called Apex Legends. Now, there have been many games out there that have advertised themselves as the battle royale which would replace Fortnite, but Apex Legends was the most polished out of all of them. Also, on a side note, it's still a really good game today with a dedicated player base, and Apex Legends has been able to forge an identity for itself rather than just being known as the Fortnite killer. Either way, Epic Games did see Apex Legends as a threat. With Fortnite being on a slump after 2 mediocre seasons, a fresh game could take bored players away from Fortnite. So Epic started to hatch a plan to keep players and possibly bring in new players. The first thing that they did was release overtime challenges, which if completed would grant you a free battle pass for Season 8. This was huge, as it was the first time Epic gave out something as big as a battle pass for free. It definitely kept existing players playing and staying for next season, and it also brought in newer, younger players who liked the idea of owning skins without paying any money. Either way, it goes to show how seriously Epic was taking its competition if they were giving away free battle passes. On February 28th, Season 8 of Fortnite was released. This was a pirate-themed season, with a whole new jungle biome in the corner of the map. If I'm gonna be honest, the beginning of Season 8 was one of the best metas Fortnite has ever had. None of the guns were too overpowered, and mobility was actually pretty good. On top of the drift boards added last season, geysers and cannons were added, which made rotating to circle really easy. Also with the 8.10 update, ballers were added into the game, which was honestly one of the best vehicles ever to come to Fortnite. It was basically a giant hamster ball with a grappler attached on front, so that you could basically swing anywhere. However, it was a bit overpowered and it would get nerfed later on in the season, but it would still be a staple of any competitive player's game. Endgames will literally just be filled with a bunch of ballers flying around. The good content didn't end there, as in the 8.11 patch, one of the best guns ever would be added. The flintlock pistol may have not dealt a lot of damage, but it was a great utility weapon. If you weren't crouching, the flintlock would send you flying into the air when you fired it, which allowed for gaining height quickly and some sick trick shots. Also, if you timed it right when falling, you could use the flintlock to negate fall damage. The flintlock was absolutely incredible because of its versatility, and it quickly became a fan favorite gun. Also, impulse grenades were unvaulted in the same update. More impulses are always a plus in my book. Overall, the first few weeks of Season 8 were excellent. The meta was just really balanced and fun. The reason why this era in Fortnite is glanced over is because there wasn't really any controversy. However, this wouldn't last long. Soon, Fortnite would reach the lowest point with its community that it ever has. In the version 8.2 update, Siphon would be removed from the game. Siphon was a feature which was added in Season 7, which would give you health when you eliminated an enemy. The competitive community liked this, as it rewarded their aggressive playstyles. They would rush a player, kill him, and using their new health and shield gained from killing him, they would rush another player, and the cycle would repeat. While competitive players liked Siphon, the casual players didn't. Epic Games removed Siphon because they claimed it encouraged an unhealthy aggressive playstyle, which led to many casual players quitting the game. The removal of Siphon caused an outrage within the competitive community. The prominent YouTuber Muzelk raised so much that he broke his phone after getting a win because he went for 3 days without getting one. Ninja would even famously quit streaming Fortnite for a day to play Uno with his squad. Overall, I think this is a time when a lot of the competitive community went overboard with how much they reacted to the update. I mean, it was literally the removal of one feature, and the competitive community acted like it was the literal end of the world. Honestly, while I don't want this video to turn into a sweat bad rant, it was pathetic seeing these people have a temper tantrum over Siphon. I think this is what really drove the split between the casual and competitive community. It was the casuals seeing the competitive community take the game way too seriously, and just feeling that they were really so pathetic. Unfortunately for the competitive community, Season 8 would keep getting worse. The Boombo would be added in the 8.30 update to mixed reviews. While some liked it, others claimed that it was too overpowered, calling it an explosive sniper which allowed you to see where the round hit. That, combined with an explosive damage of 100, made it somewhat overpowered. However, the worst would be yet to come. On May 4th, 2019, the Unvaulting event occurred. This event allowed players to vote on what vaulted item would come back into the game. And to players' dismay, the drum gun was added back into the game, in all of its overpowered glory. To be honest, I don't really know anybody who wanted the drum gun back, even in the casual community, but the competitive player base blamed the casual player base for bringing back such an overpowered weapon. Some people even claimed that Epic planned to unvault the drum gun all along and just rig the votes. Overall, I see the second half of Season 8 as a turning point for the Fortnite community. I think that this was the time when hating on Epic Games became really popular within the community. The now common trend of people complaining for Epic to fix everything they think is an issue really started in Season 8. Also, Season 8 was when the split between the casual and competitive community became so severe that the two sides started to despise each other, and this rift still continues to this day. On May 9th, 2019, Season 9 of Fortnite was released. I'm gonna be honest with you, I don't really remember a lot of this season because I didn't play much of it. The beginning of the season saw the pump shotgun being vaulted, which was something I don't think anybody saw coming. However, I don't think a lot of people complained because it was replaced by the combat shotgun, which was just a better gun in every single way. I think the major complaint this season was that there was too much mobility and that it was too easy to be third-partied. You still had the ballers, driftboards, and cannons. On top of that, you had slipstreams which allowed you to fly around the map at high speeds and leave whenever you wanted. You also had hovercrafts scattered around the map, which used vertical slipstreams to allow you to launch up into the air and glide. Overall, the competitive players were mostly mad about the slipstreams, which they claimed were added into the game to appease the little Timmies. Also, you couldn't build in slipstreams, which made it problematic when the final circles would center around one. To answer these complaints, Epic disabled the slipstreams in the final circles. However, this backfired when people would get stuck on top of the hovercrafts with no way to get back down, which led to people complaining to bring slipstreams back. Overall, if you should take anything out of this season, it's that the community is pretty hypocritical when it comes to what they want. They'll ask for something, and when that change is implemented, they'll do a complete 180 and ask for it to be removed. We'll see more of this later. However, now we have to go on to what most of you have been waiting for.
Season X is here, and the world is destabilizing fast. But don't worry, that means there are a ton of new ways to play Fortnite.
If you asked any Fortnite player what the most controversial season was, the answer you would get across the board would be Season X. It was a summer season, so we know that Epic would make it more casual friendly. Season X was supposed to have a theme of different dimensions colliding and the entire timeline collapsing. This led to some of the craziest gameplay ever in Fortnite, and a lot of times, it turned out to be a disaster. First off, we have the Brutes. These were giant mechs that had two main forms of attack, a shotgun and a rocket launcher that would fire 10 missiles at once. 10! Do you have any idea how overpowered that is? Tim the Tatman was able to wipe out a whole squad with his monitor turned off using the Brute. How are you even supposed to defend against that? And it gets worse. The driver has the option to shield himself from incoming gunfire by trading mats for protection. But that wasn't a problem for the driver because the mech could easily reach full mats using the stomp attack, which harvests any material it destroys. Do you see the problem here? These things were way too overpowered, especially once people figured out how to use them effectively. Epic Games even came out with a statement claiming that the point of the Brute was to even the playing field and to give newer players the chance to get wins. I mean, there are ways to even the playing field, but adding a giant death robot isn't the answer. However, the craziness of Season X continued. Throughout the season, there were these things called Rift Zones, which would replace current POIs with alternate universe versions of them. The first and most controversial of these was Tilted Town, which was a Wild West version of Tilted where you couldn't break items or build structures. Obviously, for a game centered around building, this angered the competitive side of the community. There were problems when the storm came to Tilted Town, where people would be unable to build out of the low ground and would be stuck at the mercy of the storm. Each other Rift Zone would have its own unique gimmick. Retail Row came back with, oh boy, more zombies. Greasy Grove also returned after 3 seasons, but instead of a burger restaurant, it was a taco restaurant, and every 2 minutes you would be forced to stop fighting and do a taco dance as tacos rained down from the sky. Honestly, it was kind of funny, but for some it was annoying, especially with the bug where people would be stuck dancing forever. One of the biggest complaints of the new season was that it added too many items, and that would clutter up the loot pool. One example was the Junk Rift. This was a throwable item which would spawn a rift over where it landed and destroy any build nearby with falling debris. Another item was the Zapper Trap, a trap you could throw onto an enemy's build. Yeah, how many of you remember that? Honestly, these items were cool, and they were fun to mess around with in Team Rumble. The problem was that they would clutter up the chests in the normal game modes. You would go around looking for good guns, but all you would get were these niche items you would probably never find a use for. And also, you probably couldn't even afford to use them. If you actually wanted to play the game seriously, you would need guns and heals, which meant that you had no space for these wackier items, making them effectively useless. Honestly, I think that this was Season X in a nutshell. You had cool ideas, which failed to be implemented well because they were too much for the game. Honestly, as someone who mostly played Team Rumble in Season X, I really loved this season, but I can see why so many people hated it. It was just way too crazy. We remembered early Fortnite and how simple it was, and we longed for those times to come back and for the crazy new Fortnite to stop existing. And on October 13th, 2019, it looks like we got our wish. After the end event, Fortnite was consumed by a black hole. Epic Games themselves also blacked out all their social media and stopped all communication. People were wondering what this all meant. Interest in Fortnite spiked in this period, and millions of people anxiously waited to see what happened next. On October 15th, 2019, after 2 days of total blackout, Fortnite Chapter 2 was revealed to the world. Epic Games had essentially soft rebooted the game, and we reset back to a Season 1. Chapter 2 Season 1 boasted a completely new map with brand new points of interest. Compared to the craziness of Season X, Chapter 2 seemed like a simple, fresh start over. The art style was also revamped to seem simpler. Overall, it looked very promising. However, that doesn't mean there wasn't any controversy. Fortnite Chapter 2 Season 1 was a complete reimagining of Fortnite and an entire reset of the game. The goal was to emulate the simple feel of the original Fortnite Season 1. The loot pool was slimmed down, with basically only simple guns and healing items remaining. The Brute was replaced by the Motorboat, whose only weapon was one pitiful missile. The season focused a lot less on gimmicky items and more on interacting with the world itself. The greatest change was with water. You were able to actually properly swim now, and a new fishing mechanic was added, allowing you to find healing items and weapons. Other small quality of life changes were added, including being able to hide in various parts of the environment like a dumpster or hay bale. You were also finally able to pick up and run with downed players. The whole leveling up system was revamped. Instead of having a separate tiered XP system, both were combined into one. This was supposed to make leveling up easier, as you would be able to level up your battle pass by just playing the game naturally instead of relying solely on weekly challenges. However, with this came the first complaint of the season. The XP system was revamped to reduce the grind of Fortnite. However, you required way too much XP to level up, almost 80,000 a level. This made leveling up almost impossible, and people wondered if it was even possible to reach tier 100. Luckily, Epic fixed this quickly. However, there were more problems. One huge one was the lack of patch notes each update. Patch notes were a form of communication between Epic and the community, which informed us on the new changes made each update. However, for whatever reason, in Chapter 2, patch notes completely stopped. This forced players to figure out for themselves what changed, which is honestly just really bizarre. Another complaint was how little stuff changed. Epic saw how much people complained about constant changes in Season X, and so they decided to make a stable meta with minimal changes. While this is good for consistent gameplay, the community realized that it was pretty boring. Honestly, I'm on Epic's side on this one. The community is honestly really hypocritical. They ask for change, but whenever Epic adds something, people complain about it or call for it to be removed. They hated the changes in Season X, but they also hated stable meta in Chapter 2? Yeah, I think the community needs to step up and decide what they want. However, I think the reason why Chapter 2 Season 1 was poorly received was just because how long it was. Season 1 was 128 days long, over 1/3 of a year. At the time, it was the longest Fortnite season ever. Honestly, I can understand why people got bored of the season after that much time. On February 20th, 2020, after what seemed like forever, Chapter 2 Season 2 was released. The season had a spy theme, with new locations being added. One of the most notable changes was the addition of NPCs in the form of henchmen and bosses. These bots would only spawn at specific locations, and they would sometimes have exclusive weapons. If you killed the bosses, you would be able to get one of their new mythic weapons. The community was split on these new features. Honestly, I think that this was the one time mythic weapons were done well. Location exclusive guns, which were more powerful than typical guns, are pretty much the way to go. Also, some people claim that the henchmen were too powerful, and that they would literally destroy you from far away. I've seen clips of this happening, but in my experience they just stand there doing nothing as I shoot them in the face. To be fair, that just means that Epic has to work on their bots. Like the previous season, this season was also really long. The season lasted for 112 days. However, the delays were due to the pandemic, so I think that we as a community should be appreciative that Epic was able to give us great content, skins, and 2 amazing live events while working from home. On June 17, 2020, the current season of Fortnite, Chapter 2 Season 3 released. Overall, it's a bit too early to judge reactions. However, this is, once again, a summer season, meaning that it will be more casual. However, so far, I don't think it's as bad as Season X. The big changes and update to the map was refreshing after so much time with no major updates. However, there were some additions that people didn't like. First are the sharks. The sharks make it impossible to fight near water, as they just keep jumping at you. They can break through builds, and if you want to res your teammate while one is on your trail, you can absolutely forget about it. However, sharks are a cool form of mobility, and it's nice to see more mobility after 2 seasons of basically having just motorboats. Oh wait, some people are complaining about that, despite the fact that they were the ones who wanted more mobility in the past seasons. Ultimately, I think that this summarizes the Fortnite community. Everybody's arguing over what's best for the game, and if the game isn't perfect in their eyes, they keep on complaining, even if it goes against what they said before. I think we all need to calm down. We all know that Epic Games isn't perfect, and they make mistakes all the time. However, we just have to keep providing real constructive criticism. Remember that Epic is making this wonderful game available to us for free. We, the community, need to work together with Epic to make the game the best it can be. With that being said, thanks for watching.